Okay, so let's move on to actually deleting the user now. Very simple to do here. All we have to do is, we'll say user, and we'll use the built-in method in here. Okay, good. And we'll just return response. We could just say success, and then return response 200. We could send across a message as well. Number of things we could do here. Let's send across a message in this case. So we'll go JSON message equals, all right, successfully deleted user. Okay, and let's see what happens here. We need to go users management dashboard. Basically, when this is successful, under delete user, we're going to flash success and reload so it doesn't show that there. Let's see here. So we could say successfully deleted user. Okay. And that should work for us because that method's already built in for us. Okay, good. Let's go back to this. We'll refresh and we'll delete that. See what happens. Successfully deleted user. You can see it reloaded all the results. That result is no longer in there. Again, do that again. Get rid of all of the test ones that we made in there. Now, typically when a major event or action takes place like this, we want to do something with that data in two cases. One, we want to do something we want to notify maybe an administrator, or at least we want to log what happened with the deletion, or even the creation of the user for that matter. So there's a couple ways we can do this. One, we could, first of all, we need to start by creating a user logs table. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we're going to fire off what we call events in Laravel. So first things first, let's go over here. We'll open up another prompt window. We'll say PHP artisan make. In this case, I'm going to make a model, and then I'll create a migration based upon that model. And this is just so we don't have to configure anything else. I find a lot less mistakes are made doing it this way. We'll put it in its own models folder, and we'll call this UserLog. Now your models are always going to be singular, and that will create a table that is plural. So if we actually look at the database once this is created, we'll see user logs. So right here, create user logs table. So let's go ahead and access this. I'll just copy that, Control P, Control V, and now we have that here. So very simple, only a couple of fields I really want to put in here. One, as an unsigned integer, I want to put a user ID so that we know what which user this was for. And I want to put table dash, and then I want to do a string for our actual, I'm going to call it a slug in this case. And this is how I'm going to reference all of my, later on when I create filter tables. This is how I'll reference them. And then we'll say string for the actual message. And just in case I want to reverse the data, one option I have here is to go to create a text column that we're going to be using for to serialize our arrays, place them in there as JSON, so that if we ever go back and we say, okay, you know what, I didn't mean to delete the user, we can actually go in and we can undelete the user with the previous data before that actually happened. So that I'm not going to take care of in this course because that's a little more advanced, and so we'll look at that in a different course as well. Let's pull up the user log model. Perfect. And then in here, we need to, I'm just going to go protected, guarded, And this is so that we can update all of the data that's in there. Okay. Now all we have to do is go PHP artisan migrate, and that's going to create the table. It's going to add that table to our database. So that's great in there. Now, a couple of things we could do in here. I don't need that. I don't need that. In the user's controller, say for example, when a user is stored, I could go UserLog in here and then create and then write that message out. Let's say, for example, we want to do this. We want to allow this ability from another part of the application. What I'd rather do is I'd rather tie into the user's model and fire off an event every single time a creation action is taken and every single time a deletion action is taken. Oh, or even an edit. That would be an option in there as well. So in this case, let's go to our user's model over here. And I'm not going to create the event yet, but I'm going to call the event from here, basically. Again, protected. Dispatches events in there, and I'm going to specify the events that I want to dispatch based on a number of criteria. So in this case, I want to dispatch this event if every single time a new user model is created, and so here it's going to be app / /events / users, and then we'll say created user. Another one I'll want to add in here is deleting. Deleting is basically, it allows me to capture the specific, the user before it's actually deleted will be passed in here. So I can then go and store that information before that record is actually deleted. So created deleting, and we'll say deleting user. Okay, let's go over to our event service provider. So you could type that up here. The providers, however, as you'll see, we can also find in, we'll say app providers, event service provider. Okay. Now under here in this array where it says listen, this is where we're going to register our events and we're going to register our listeners. So every time an event is fired, any listener that is attached to that event is going to fire off as well. Okay. So in here, let's say app / events users, just like we wrote up there, and then we'll say created user. We want listeners to tie into this. So this is where we're going to add our listeners. And typically I like to keep even the listeners, because there's usually going to be more listeners than there are going to be events. I like to even subdivide those. So in this case, I'm going to say log created user, and it's very explicit what this particular listener does. And I'm also going to go app listeners users. Sorry, I actually meant to do logs, and then log created user users. I'm going to say notifications, and this is where we can plug into all sorts of utilities that are provided to us. We could broadcast this and then show this in the front end of our application to administrators, like kind of a running log. Or we could say use a webhook on a variety of services. The most frequent one I use is on Slack. So the users, notifications, notify, and then we'll say notify created user. So we might notify an administrator, users, whatever the situation might be there. Okay. Let's go ahead and create our other event listener. /events /users, and then this one's going to be deleting user. We have an array of listeners now. Listeners, users, logs, and we'll say log deleting user. And very importantly as well, we'll put in notifications. just makes it so much easier when you break it down this way to then change, if you have to change multiple ones in there. We can do that now. So, okay, so now all we need to do is go PHP artisan make, not make, we need to do event generate. And that's going to go ahead and generate those. So we see events, users, created user, deleting user, listeners. You see we have logs and we have notifications in here. So there's very little we need to do except what we'll do in the next video is we'll pass that data through every time a user is created and a user is deleted.